And I want to say that's not easy stuff. It's not easy stuff because many of us have been damaged by love. Many of us have been damaged by people who said they love us. Many of us have had parents who have said they love us, and then have used that as a weapon to disenfranchise us. Many of us have done that to others because that's what we got taught. It's very difficult to have an extravagant love when the love that you have given so freely often comes back to bite you, often come back to hit you, often has been used as a weapon against you. And no wonder, therefore, as adults and as those who are called to this notion of love, it's difficult to really embody that and to embrace it and to live it in the world today. It's difficult to do that because we do keep records of wrongs. We do keep a record of how the world has treated us, and therefore we treat the world in the same way. When I was a child, I thought like a child. I acted like a child. I behaved like a child. But when I became an adult, I put away childish ways. That's the middle piece of this 1 Corinthians 13, and it's the part of the passage that is often missed out when we hear 1 Corinthians read. Often we will read the first part of 1 Corinthians about that wonderful, it's often read at weddings and wonderful celebrations that we have, and we'll often do that last piece of that reading from 1 Corinthians, but these three things remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. But we miss out this middle piece. And I really believe that this middle piece holds the key for our love life. I think this middle piece holds the key for us in our sense of maturity and our sense of being called as the children, as the adult children of God. You see, sometimes I think we just stay at the place of a child. And we forget that we've been called to become adult children of God. To grow in our spiritual maturity. We called our church at the very beginning of this year to use 2010 as a time of maturing our faith and maturing our spiritual journeys. You know, I want to be honest with you. I think many people who follow Jesus are really stuck at infancy. Really stuck at infancy. You know, that kind of infancy that says that my faith is lived through somebody else. Come on, Rick. Do you hear that? Yeah. My faith is lived through someone else. It's either lived through the preacher, or it's lived through a Sunday school teacher, or it's lived through our parents. But it's lived in such a way that the image of God and the image of love that we have is the image of God and the image of love of somebody else. And not our own image of God and not our own image of love. Not our own image of who we have been called to become. You see, because even though we are called into being, we are called to become something. Which means that if we are truly responsible, truly becoming the adult children of God, then we are called to sense maturity in our relationship with God. Not the relationship that our parents had. Not even the relationship that perhaps we had with a childhood church. Or perhaps with someone who was a mentor when we were young and growing up. But rather that we have been called into this adult relationship with God, which means that we must put away our childish ways and grow up into our own sense of maturity, into the place of the love that we have been called to receive. That means that no longer are we dependent on love through our parents, but we are dependent on love for ourselves. Now that's a hard thing to imagine. Especially when we have been rejected or oppressed. Especially when we have lived in a world that has not expressed love for itself. You know, I said this at the 9 o'clock service, and perhaps I should just say it one more time. I believe that we are only oppressed if we allow ourselves to be oppressed. I get a little tired, I have to be honest, of this oppression sickness that our community, and I'm not just talking about the LGBT community, I'm talking about our communities, find themselves in because they have refused to claim their own power. They want power from somebody else, but it's not about power from somebody else. It's about claiming our own power in our own bodies and in our own selves. You see, receiving power from someone else is what children do. What adults do is claim our own power, our own names, our own bodies. And I know that the world wants to take it away from us, but you know, people can only take it away from you if you let them. You know, the reality is that when we were a child, that's what happened, but we are now adults. We've been called into an adult relationship with a God who no longer calls us children, but calls us friends, calls us co-heirs, co-creators with God. And that because of that, we are called into our fullness and into our humanness because of the love that we've been given. A love that goes beyond anything we could ever hope for or ever have imagined. How's your love life? How is it? And by that, I'm not talking about your relationship with somebody else. I'm talking about how is your relationship with you? How in love with you are you? How in love are you with you? Not sure? Because if we are truly called to this Christian journey, we are really called to be in the likeness of Christ, which is what being a Christian is about. It's not about a set of dogmas. Being Christian is not about following a set of rules and regulations. That's what they did in the temple, and it was no good according to Jesus. If we are truly called to be in the likeness of Christ and to be Christians, to be followers of Jesus, to be imitators of Jesus, then we are called to put away our childish ways and to come into our fullness as adults in relationship with God and adults in relationship, love of self.